Hello, I'm Richard Vobes, a bold explorer, and today I'm making a return visit to see the lovely Kym Murdon. Hello, Kym.
Hello, Richard.
We last saw you, Kym, when you were telling us all about your herbalist life,
Yes, a
your
little.
work with
Yep,
herbs, in your cabin, which is at the top of the garden.
yep,
But you have another string to your bow,
I
which is
do.
an interesting and theatrical sort of string.
Well, it's the world of being self-employed. As you know, you have to wear many hats.
You do, absolutely. So, Kym is a storyteller, and I was intrigued to learn more about storytelling because I sort of tell my stories in a digital way on YouTube. But we're talking about more of the traditional storytelling that has been going on through the centuries, isn't it?
Yes, we're talking about the oral tradition, so it's not reading out of a book.
Yes.
It's so learning a tale and being able to offer that to maybe one person or whatever the audience is. And I would say probably over the last 30 years, there's been quite a resurgence in Britain, down to a couple of key people who've really gone, we need to keep this alive. It's one of those really ancient human needs to have story.
Yes. What do you think? Everything's a story. Even
everything's.
on wine labels, you're getting
Yeah.
the story of the vineyard to make you choose that
Yes.
particular bottle of wine.
Absolutely. And there's an author, Ben Okri, Nigerian descent. He lives in London, I think now. But he told us this thing where he went to some science symposium and they were going, well, what's the importance of story? And he kind of teased it out over a whole lecture. And at the end, he said, well, you do realise that the Big Bang is a story. None of us were there.
Yes.
So we are framing these things the whole time. And when you and I or whoever we meet, out walking or, we engage through story.
Through story.
With each other. So that's one way to make people understand that story is really important to
Yes.
us. And then part of my passion is, the more I've done storytelling is to re-find the stories of this land, and retell those. And of course what has happened, I suppose it started with people like the Grimm brothers in Germany. We started to write things down,
Right.
and it becomes quite static. But when you then take it back into that oral place, it will shift a bit, and you'll start to tell it from your own experience.
Yes. Well, I mean, people. I guess people know that when they tell jokes.
Yes.
Sometimes they'll string the joke out a bit, depending if the audience are enjoying it, whether it's around your Christmas table or whatever, or other times if it's not, is less appropriate, you'll just do it more quickly.
Yes.
So you can embellish or not embellish.
Absolutely, and there's lots of talk about how you would have the village storyteller who would know these huge, which I don't know, these huge volumes of work, but they would then tailor the telling as to what was going on for the people at the time. So quite a sort of a skill base there, or maybe it was a knowing, I don't know. And the other thing, to say about storytelling is something very interesting happens to us as human beings, that you have the teller who's telling the tale, you have the audience, but then you also have this presence of the story that's come down through all these other storytellers, and there's been some interesting research done on that where I don't quite how they do it, but they do magnetic resonancing of people when they're all listening to a story, and a group brain pattern starts to emerge. So,
right.
I think,
okay.
So it takes us into
Is that the same sort of thing as if you're any sort of theatrical body of people? If you're an auditorium, a body of people at, say, a theatrical event, and everybody's concentrating on this thing in front of them that's unfolding, like in a theatre.
Yeah.
And you as a performer, you can sense the atmosphere.
Yes, I think you're probably right. And I think there's another storyteller I know. She did this experiment where she learned a story just like the words on the page, and she worked with children. And she went into the classroom and she told this story with none of her internal imaging going on, and then got the children to draw a picture afterwards of the tale. She went to another classroom and did another tale that she'd learned, done as the storyteller way, where you kind of really embody the tale. And again, the children drew the pictures. And what came out was the children from that first classroom, the pictures were quite dull, not very imaginative. The second lot were really colourful, very, lots of imagination was tapped into. And what was even more, she really really surprised her with some of the images, with the things that she had been imagining in her head. Not that she'd necessarily verbalised that to the children, but there was a sort of this collective, process going on, which is very curious, and interesting.
So where do you do your storytelling? Because I mean, you think. Well, I guess I'll leave you to answer the question, really, shouldn't I?
You should really, yeah. I do it in a number of places. So I'll mention the local groups. There's the South Down Storytellers. That's a small group. They meet in a room above a pub in Lewes, the Lewes Arms, once a month. There's another group called the Guest House Storytellers down in New Haven. Again, we meet once a month.
So it's a bit like a comedy club, but it's sort of like a storytelling club.
Yeah, I mean, people come along.
People come to listen to stories.
They come to listen to the stories because we're all kind of suckers for stories. And some people come and they never tell a story, but they just love listening.
Right.
And there's others who we love telling stories. And we might have sometimes there's a theme, and other times people just pop up and tell a story that they're learning at the time. So it's in my book, a good storytelling club, you usually just limit people to about 10 minutes because that's about the concentration most of us can bear listening to another person. But it's it also just keeps the evening flowing. At other times though, professional storytellers do come in and we'll do a whole evening. So I wouldn't count myself into that. The labels are interesting, aren't they? So the thing is, it's a skill. It's a way. It's something when you're storytelling. All of us can storytell. We've all got a story.
Yes.
And there's a Scottish tale about a man who goes to a house and the farmer gives him a bed for the night. But he said, "Have you got a story?" And give you the bones of it. And he said, "No, I haven't got a story." But then over the night, he has this really bad dream. And in the morning he wakes up and he goes, "Actually, I've got to tell you what I dreamt." And then the farmer goes, "Well, now you have got a story."
Yes.
So the next time you go to a house, you've got a story to
yes.
tell.
Oh, so, yes. And of course, people do that at breakfast anyway, don't they? Sometimes you come and say, "I had this awful dream," and you try to tell the dream.
Yeah.
And you're telling a story.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the thing, is you get drawn in, don't you?
I do.
So why do you suppose stories matter?
I mean, they're using words and we connect. And I think that's the thing we haven't mentioned. I think in our culture at the moment, we think storytelling is just for little tiddly wee people. But, I tell to adults.
Yes.
And once adults get it, they are absolutely blown away. And you don't have to explain anything. It's this place where you start a tale. The day before yesterday, I met this man down the road. And within sort of a minute, people have descended into this imaginary world. And I think it touches something that's not of our intellectual brain. We don't. Yeah. So you can actually impart quite a lot of knowledge and psychological processing, whatever, how you want to describe it. So people will, whatever's going on in their life, it will touch that part of them without them having to spend hours thinking about it in a very cogent way.
So different from a novel where you've got backstories, you're trying to make the characters more realistic. They can be more apocryphal or
I think with a lot of the stories, if you're working with what we would call traditional folk tales and fairy tales, there's research showing that those, some of them are like 5,000 years old plus.
Yeah.
And in there's lots of information about how to deal with different characters in the world, and how, or when you're going out in life and you're going on an adventure, but you're actually learning how to resource yourself, how to deal with difficult situations. So it's a way of doing it, because none of us actually like to be told the truth in a very factual way. We usually we shut down and we'll block that off. But if you do it in a storytelling way, it enters in at a different level. I think it sort of enters almost in a heart and soul level.
So do you have to, storytellers, do they just stick to the old traditional stories, or can new stories be added? People make them up? Yeah,
there's all sorts. Some people just love doing autobiographical tales, we work with that. And that's quite interesting if you're working with people, I don't know, there's people who like to work with refugees and they'll get them to tell their story, and that's a way of sort of processing things in. I'm not I like the word processing, sounds a bit industrial, but digesting life experiences. And there's other people who just work with the old tales, so it's a very broad church, and a huge crossover I mean, I suppose when I started, I did do lots of global tales, and then I thought, oh, why am I sort of telling tales from Indonesia? Because we've got a huge amount of tales from our own land, and there's lots of English tales and Scottish tales, and yes, it's good to kind of breathe new life into those and orientate. Because I know over your last few videos and podcasts, you've been talking about the land here, what finds us passionate, and the stories. The stories really speak to that, our natural place in the landscape and the natural rhythms of our life, and I think it's really good. Well,
Kym, we are going to end this video now, but in the next video, you're very kindly going to donate one of your stories to all our lovely viewers. You're going to tell us one of your stories.
Yes, I can do that.
We will find out, from the horse's mouth, as it were.
Yeah, whether I can do it.
Well, experience the story. So thanks very much for the moment. Do join us on the next video. In the meantime, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to follow, like and subscribe. Press the bell notification, they all say that. Give us a thumbs up, all the usual nonsense. It really helps. And we will see you on the next one. But for now, thank you so much for watching, and thank you, Kym.
Thank you.
And we look forward to the story. Till then, bye-bye.